Hey everybody, Mike here. So for right around 6 months now, I've been running this Roborock Q Revo vacuum around my house. Let's go ahead and address the elephant in the room. I don't exactly love this thing, but I don't hate it either. Let me go ahead and take a couple minutes here and I'll explain myself. I originally purchased this because I was looking for a way to not have to vacuum the house 2 or 3 times a week. Our biggest nemesis at home is combating the amount of dog hair that my husky produces on a weekly basis. So if you've got any kind of animal that sheds at all, you're very well aware of how hard it is to kind of keep up with the hair around the house and around the baseboards. This led me to do a bunch of research. I ended up settling on the Q Revo for a number of reasons. The main reason was how attractive the price was compared to some of the others. Being that this is my first robot vacuum, I didn't want to go all out and purchase the top of the line deal. I didn't want the cheap one either. I felt like this was a good middle line vacuum that had just enough features to get me going and kind of see if I was going to like this thing or not before I committed on something that was a lot more expensive. Let me go ahead and get into what I love about this thing the most, and then I'll get into a few of the things that I dislike. First thing I want to go ahead and address is how well it does at picking up the dog's hair and how intuitive and amazing the actual app is that you operate this vacuum from. So as I mentioned, with having dog hair in the house, pretty much anytime I finish vacuuming, it's not 15 minutes later before it looks like the house hasn't been vacuumed in a day already. So if we go 3, 4, 5 days without vacuuming, needless to say, there's a lot of hair that needs to be picked up around the house. This thing does an amazing job of picking up pretty much all the dog hair. I mean, like 99% of it. It does a great job of getting around all the nooks and crannies and all the corners of the house. And a lot of that is due to this little trim brush right here that spins as this thing's going around the floor. It does an amazing job of cycling all that hair over to the actual roller here, which then sucks the hair up into the little container. Now the container on this thing is housed back here in the back. And believe it or not, this thing's actually got quite a bit of capacity. It really packs it in there. What's even more impressive though is when this thing finishes vacuuming and goes back over to the docking station, the amount of suction that base station produces to get the hair, debris, and other dirt sucked up into the actual vacuum bag that's stored within the base station is absolutely incredible. And I'll show you a clip here of what that thing sounds like. Now that's the loudest part of this whole vacuum. I'll get into how much noise this thing makes while it's actually operating at the same time in just a minute. The first time I ran this thing and it went back and sucked up all the hair from inside this compartment over to the main base station, it caught me off guard because it is so powerful and loud. Now when it comes to actually running the vacuum though across the house, here's a couple things to keep in mind. If you're running it on the vacuum feature, if you've got a lot of carpet in your house, the one thing you'll notice is it's gonna be a little harder to hear the TV if you're sitting there at night. We've done that a few times before after we put the kids to bed. Just say, hey, let's go ahead and run this thing. It's possible we do that from time to time. We have to crank the volume up on the TV a little bit, but it is doable. But my best suggestion is to run this thing maybe first thing in the morning when you get up, right after you've gone to bed for the night, or even while you're gone, as long as you got everything picked up off the floor. So we'll get into obstacle avoidance here next. When it comes to avoiding obstacles in the house, the one thing that this vacuum really struggles with, at least in my opinion, is rugs. Now, if you've got the non-slip rugs and they're low profile, it glides right over those with ease. I don't have problems with those. But if you've got those little bit thicker rugs or those loose frayed rugs on the ends, to me, in my opinion, it's best to just pick those rugs up and get them out of the way until after this thing's finished its vacuuming and mopping. I've got a couple places, especially at my front door, my entryway, where that rug created a corner and the vacuum would actually go in there and get itself in the corner, but it couldn't get itself back out again. So after a few times, that was one of the frustrating points, and I just decided to pull that rug up. Not the end of the world, just something to keep in mind. Now, when it comes to the mopping on this thing, I do feel like there's a little bit to be desired there. Now, this doesn't have the hot water heated features like some of the real expensive ones have. Keep that in mind. That's where this money savings comes in on this model. To go around the house and just knock out dust, it does an incredibly good job of being a dust mop. And it can actually handle a lot of spills as long as they haven't sat there for too long to where they've had a lot of time to sit and dry out. That's where you got to kind of get into some of the deep cleaning methods, which the app has built into it as well. As far as cleaning solutions go, Roborock recommends that you use their proprietary cleaning solution. Although there are many solutions out there on the market that will work, just do your own research on that as to which cleaner you feel is right for you so that you don't damage your vacuum or any of the components within this thing. Now also with the mopping feature, the base station has 2 tanks. It has a clean water tank and a dirty water tank. The clean water tank actually holds quite a bit of water. I don't have to refill that thing for a month or even 2 months at a time, depending on how much I've mopped during that month. The dirty water tank, it's kind of the same concept. Now, when it comes to the components on the bottom of this vacuum, you'll see here, you got your roller here. I feel like it's done a fairly good job of not having any tangles get up into it. The one exception is if you get an abundance of really long hair, if you've got a few women that live in the house, it does struggle with that. The nice thing about that though is this thing does come apart pretty easily. You can clean that roller out and stick it back in. Now when it comes to the mop heads on this thing, these things just pop right out of here like so. Now what's nice about these mop heads is it's got a self-cleaning function, so this thing can run around. It'll clean the mop heads before it runs any mopping feature. After so many minutes, it'll come back to the docking station and wash the mopping heads. You can set that feature within the app, but you'll want to keep in mind, I think it's like 25 minutes max. So if you've got more than that to do in mopping, it will have to come back at least once, if not twice, and clean the mop heads. seconds in the middle of your session. Now on the actual unit itself here, it's got LiDAR built into it, so it uses AI technology basically, scan the house, and in fact, the first time you use this thing, it'll run around and kind of make a 3D floor plan using the LiDAR and AI. It'll scan all the flooring and save it so it knows where carpet is and where bare floors are and so forth. And then this thing has sensors built in all the way around the actual unit itself so that it can go through and scan. So basically, if you do have a pet in the house or you got babies or kids and they're leaving their toys out, this can scan and see those toys. And not to mention, if you're not at home and this thing's running, and let's just say the dog used the bathroom in the house, while I've not tested this feature, I've seen several others who have say that it does avoid those messes really well. Now, where I have had issues in the past is when it comes to like Christmas time, we've got all of our holiday decorations out, the tree, presents, and various things that we have sitting around, it doesn't always detect those bigger obstacles. So if it hits a present, it doesn't have a lot of weight to it. I have had an issue where it's pushed a present across the floor because it's actually wanting to register the bumper on this unit instead of the LiDAR for whatever reason. That's a pretty easy fix though. You can go into the app and you can set up no-go zones. You can leave those permanently in place or temporarily in place. And for us, in our instance, I just put in no-go zones around the tree. It didn't go to that area when I took the tree and all the decorations down. Then I took that no-go zone away and it can go back to that spot. The vacuum also does its own no-go zones. So if you've got like a steep drop off from a step or something of that nature, it'll register and save that within the floor plan, and you don't have to worry about that thing going off the cliff and down the stairs in that instance. Now, when it comes to these LiDAR sensors as well, you also want to keep in mind with pets and other various hair and debris, you'll have to every once in a while wipe those sensors off so they maintain their optimum performance as they're going about their day. Now, on the front of this thing's got a couple buttons here. You've got a rehome button and a power button. You can hit those, but what you're going to find is that within the app itself, that's going to be your best way to go about doing this. The app is extremely intuitive. It's got a ton of features built into that. It'd take me another easily 30 minutes to go through all that and explain that app, but it's really cool because you can go through and you can select which rooms you want to do. You can spot sweep, spot mop. You can actually use the app like a remote control and drive the vacuum around the house. You can set up schedules, so if you've got certain schedules or certain times of the day or during the week you want this thing to run, you can set all that up. I've played with that a little bit. That's a really cool feature. You can go through and check out your cleaning history as well, and it'll show you all the stats based on how long it took to clean that day, how many square feet it actually cleaned within your home, how many cycles over the lifetime of the vacuum that it's ran. Also within the app, you can set up whether you want it to just mop, just vacuum, or mop and vacuum. I found personally for me, I like to go through and actually vacuum first and just do that feature only, and then I'll go back and mop if I feel it needs it. Main reason for that is because I have found when you mop and vacuum at the same time, the mop heads are wet if it's already mopped somewhere, and I don't like the fact that it drags those wet mop heads across my carpet. But you can play with that feature a little bit yourself and decide whether that's right for you or how you want to play with that. I don't want to make this video too long, so there's a ton of other features this thing's capable of. Mainly my main frustrations with this thing, I've already mentioned a few of them, but the only other frustrations I have is if you're really particular about your lines on the carpet and you want that nice look, vacuum looked across your carpet, this thing does an amazing job at making those lines nice and straight. For whatever reason, every once in a while, it doesn't do it every time, it'll go from room to room and then it'll cut across the room it just vacuumed and leave a diagonal line across the floor. It doesn't necessarily drive me nuts, but I've always scratched my head and wondered why it would do that after it's already vacuumed that room. I'd like to see it go around and skip that room altogether and just basically have it as a closed off room now, saying that room's done, doesn't need to go back. So kind of press upon my points here. If I was asked if I was going to buy this thing again, yes, I absolutely would. I think at the value you get this vacuum at, this is a no-brainer. It's probably the best value at this price point and the amount of features that are built into this vacuum out there amongst all the brands I looked at. It's not going to have all the features all the higher end vacuums have. I think it's got the most features packed into a vacuum at this price point. That's enough for me to be able to look over a few of the frustrating points that I brought up in this video for me to be able to feel comfortable and say that I would make this purchase again. I kind of feel like I rambled on a little bit in this video, but there's just so much to cover with this vacuum that I don't want to make this video an hour long. So if you stuck into this point, I appreciate you taking the time to watch. I hope this was somewhat helpful for you guys in making a decision whether this vacuum might be right for you or not. That's all I've got for you on this one though. I appreciate you guys watching, and we'll catch you guys on the next one.